Hi QA folks, in this video let's talk about how you can implement API testing in Playwright. So first of all, let's talk about how you can, what approach you can use. So you can use CRUD operations. It's an acronym for four basic operations used to manipulate data: create, read, update, and delete. And in RESTful API environment, it corresponds to post, get, put, and delete requests. Now, what libraries do I use, or what I'm importing here? It's test and expect from Playwright itself, Faker to randomize some data, and Luxord to also get some data and values to send to the server. Now, I extracted base URL, I put it here, but you can also store it in Playwright config.js. But for visibility and simplicity, I put it here. Also, I declared couple of endpoints that I'm going to use in my example. It's first endpoint to get auth token using post request. Second endpoint it's to work with bookings, and being RESTful API, the same endpoint can accept different HTTP methods to perform different operations on the resource. In this case, it will post, get, and delete, sent to the same endpoint. Now here, first of all, I extracted in the function post request to receive auth token, and here I'm sending you see post request.post, so I'm using request that comes from Playwright itself. You are passing it here when you are writing your tests. So endpoint, and you send, in this specific case, username and password as a plain text, but it depends on the implementation of the endpoint. Sometimes the browser will encrypt it for you, sometimes your client, your front end will do that before sending it. But anyway, in here sample in this example it's just a plain text. So after I send request, I store response and verify that response status is 200. Okay, meaningful, it went successfully. And then I'm extracting from using await response.json, I'm extracting token from the response. Now, going further to tests themselves. First one, it's to get auth token. Here it's almost the same as in this function, but this function is extracted separately because I will reuse it in as a request, like to create booking, to delete or patch. So that's why I extracted it. But overall, first test, yeah, post get auth token. Again, I'm using request Playwright object itself, saying await request.post, passing my endpoint, this one, the same data JSON body, verifying response status code, and also verifying that response has property token, and in this particular case the token length is 15 symbols. Let's run this one and see. So you see this is the response. Verify that token is present, field is present, and that its length is 15 characters or symbols. Now next example is to send, how to send post request. For example, create a booking. Here I'm creating random data to include it in the body. It will be JSON that we are going to send via post request. And here I'm sending it, saying request.post by passing my endpoint for booking and body as a data property. Again, this request comes from the Playwright itself. Then after I receive response, I verify response code, and in response JSON body, I also perform some verifications like booking ID is more than 0, that the response has property booking, that the booking object has other fields like first name, last name, price, deposit paid or not, and some other. Then I'm extracting booking ID and sending GET request to see that created booking ID is being returned from backend when you send get all booking IDs request. And I also check that the entity has been created by sending GET request to retrieve entity by specific booking ID. So in this case, it will be /booking/ID that we received from our post request. And then I also verify in those responses that they have properties that we initially sent to it when we declared it here in our post request. So let's run this one and see. So you see request to this endpoint. This is our data that we are sending. Response, it returned booking ID. I'm saving it, and it also returned the data that we sent. Then the first verification that it will be this ID will be returned in the list of all booking IDs. And the second verification that it can return entity or those values, that object with those values, by requesting by ID directly. This is the example of post request. You see nothing really difficult, it's just you need to pay attention or just write some code for those verification points that you are going to check. If you're going to check some fields, their values, and so on. This one, get all booking ID list, again, this one we used previously above, but here it's been extracted as a separate standalone test. Again, checking, I'm sending get response, request.get, booking endpoint, verify response code is 200, and then verify that it has the first, that it's array, and the first object in that array has property booking ID, and this booking ID is more than 0. Also, here's an example how you can send GET requests with parameters, usually those being sent as a part of the URL itself. So you see request.get, and here you can specify params. Here I'm just verifying response code for put request to update entity. Example with headers and now token in cookie. Again, request.put your endpoint. So let's say I'm going to update second booking with ID equals 2. So, and inside I can specify headers. I'm passing token, which I received here on that, from this function that I declared initially on the top. And this is the body of the request that I want to update those values, those fields to these values. After that, I'm verifying response code and verifying that returned values has manually updated value. Example of patch request, the same request await request dot patch. I'm receiving token, passing it in cookie and headers. I'm sending data. We define response code and fields that returned in JSON body. And example of delete request, the same, obtaining auth token, because usually it should be sent as part of request to manipulate data. Then I'm getting some IDs for deletion to make the test independent. I'm not reusing something from above, so I'm just getting the whole list and taking the first one, the first available. And then I'm sending delete request using request.delete and using endpoint booking, and there goes slash and your booking ID. And usually delete requests contain only headers without body. Sometimes they probably can, but in this particular case not. So I'm sending which entity to delete in the URL itself. And then in most cases you will need to specify some headers like content type and auth token. And here I'm just sending that the return status code is 201. So yeah, that's it guys. Let's run all of them all together. Let's see if everything is green.